Let me put my tools away. Back in 1982, the ultralight aircraft movement was in full swing, and I got the idea of doing a television series on general aviation. And I got some help together. Don Ratley and Sharon Corkish were a great help. Ken Boucher from Video Interface and his crew, Dennis Sherwood and Johnny Richardson, really helped me out a lot, and Ken was a great cameraman. Also, Chip Davis from the great group Mannheim Steamroller let me use their music. Put this thing together, presented it to PBS, and it didn't fly. Well, I've dusted off the archives, and I decided there's some footage here that viewers of the Tailwheelers Journal might be interested in watching. So I've split it up into two parts, and this first one is the first half of flight, and it's the section on the ultralight aircraft movement. It's got some kind of fun stuff in it. I think you'll like it. So here it is, the television series that no one ever saw, part one of Flight.
I'm Brian Landsberg. For the next half hour, let's go flying. This week on Flight, we're going to take a look at the ultralight airplane movement that's catching on all over the country. Thousands of people are taking to the air in these abbreviated little airplanes, and they've bypassed the usual federal regulation of both aircraft and pilot. Call it a contraption, a kite, a motorized hang glider, call it a flying lawn chair if you like. The fact is it's an airplane, if you use my definition, which is a fixed-wing powered aircraft. The evolution of these aircraft was logical and predictable. They were born out of a desire for a flying machine that would be fun, but just as important, economical. And the ultralight industry began to boom as soon as that concept came close to being a reality. But before we get into that, let's take it up. An experienced airplane pilot has no trouble transitioning to an ultralight, especially one with 3-axis controls. That's one that doesn't depend on the hang glider method of weight shift for control. Many non-flyers believe that the simple-looking ultralight must somehow be easier to fly than the conventional airplane. But although the ultralight lacks the systems of some airplanes, it still requires the same piloting skills, and in some ways requires more from its pilot, because it often lacks the responsiveness we're used to from airplanes. The ultralight, like all airplanes, demands that the pilot know the limits of its performance envelope. The ultralight is a basic airplane, and so it gives its pilot a basic and beautifully pure taste of the joy of flight. So as you can see, the ultralight pilot is getting a lot of the same things the light airplane pilot is getting, especially in terms of the sport aspect of flying. Now, nobody's suggesting that he's getting the same utility out of his airplane that the owner of this plane is getting, but he's paying a lot less for his fun. A new ultralight can cost as little as 1/10 the price of a new light airplane. Its maintenance and fuel costs reflect similar savings. An ultralight pilot can go out and enjoy a day of flying for about as much as it would cost him to operate a motorcycle. Ultralight pilots vary in the level of their qualifications. Some hold at least a private pilot certificate. Others hold even higher ratings. And the sport has many professional pilots in its ranks. But some ultralight pilots hold no pilot certificate at all. At the present time, none is required to fly an ultralight. Now, that doesn't mean that those pilots are somehow deficient in either training, aptitude, or experience. It simply means that the responsibility for determining their proficiency remains solely with them. And that, some people fear, sets the stage for scenes like this.
It is going to be easy. You won't have any problem flying this baby. Just give me the money before you take off.
Here's the guy a lot of people are worried about. The non-flyer who buys himself an ultralight then proceeds to teach himself how to fly in it. Now, if you challenge the wisdom of his training program, you usually get an answer like,
"How do you think the Wright brothers learned how to fly?"
But the point is that the ultralight is not a reinvention of the airplane. It's simply a logical outgrowth of the changing wants and needs of sport aviators. You see, Wilbur and Orville couldn't turn to a local flight instructor for a few hours of duel before hitting the sands of Kitty Hawk, but the modern ultralight owner can, and he should if he wants to avoid the painful mistakes of his pioneering predecessors. contact departure.
1102. Aircraft 6 and 904, taxiing to position at hold, runway 10.
We operated our Hummingbird ultralight on an airport controlled by an FAA tower. We made prior arrangements, we carried a radio, and we had no trouble at all fitting in with other traffic.
Report right now on runway 32.
Metro Tower, Hummingbird 058 on the right downwind, runway 32.
Hummingbird 058, cleared to land, runway 32.
058.
But as ultralights grow in popularity and numbers and mix with other certificated aircraft, the feds are starting to pay more attention to these up-to-now unregulated free spirits of the air. They've recently published what's called a Notice of Proposed Rulemaking, or NPRM. If their proposal becomes law, it'll place some new restrictions on ultralights. For one thing, it would set forth a new legal definition of an ultralight.
Well, Jim, currently, how is the FAA defining what an ultralight is?
Well, the ultralight is defined now as a single-seat vehicle that can be foot-launched.
Okay, and under the proposed rules, how will that change?
It will change in that it will have to be 155 pounds or less, single seat, carry 15 pounds of fuel or less, and then it will remain in the ultralight. Anything over that weight would then have to be certified under the present rules.
Howdy. All right. Well, the rules that the FAA propose still don't deal with the question of pilot training or certification. Some manufacturers, though, are instituting flight training courses on their own.
As far as that we're concerned, we do have an 8-hour course that our dealers are required to give their students. So even if you're a pilot or a non-pilot, you have to take a proficiency ground school with audio-visual to make sure you know how the airplane works.
Well, I have found the ultralight to be a very intriguing aircraft. Now, some people look down their noses at it. They prefer instead their big turbo-supercharged singles and twins that'll get them to destinations hundreds of miles away and in no time at all. And they'll carry a lot of baggage besides. But, you see, the ultralight isn't for those people. The ultralight is for those people who fly for the sake of flight.
Many ultralights currently being marketed either in kit form or ready to fly still have some bugs to be worked out. Probably the biggest problem is the lack of an engine that really suits their needs in terms of power and weight, but is as reliable as the current breed of engines found on certificated aircraft. Ultralights can't carry much weight, and they don't go very far or very fast. But as you fly these little airplanes, particularly in formation with your flying friends, your eyes get open to a kind of flying that's very special. Out in the air, bugs in your teeth flying that has very little practical application. But it sure is fun. Ultralight represents, for many people, a fantasy come true. It's a variation of the age-old dream of flight. It's the modern-day dream of the little airplane in the garage. A dream spawned in the imagination of the basement tinkerer and heralded before its time in the pages of popular mechanics. But its time is now. The ultralight is a reality, and the bugs will be worked out. The airplane for the common man is here, and the gift of flight is his. The key to the enjoyment of this gift is knowledge gained through proper training, careful practice, and common sense. If the would-be pilot approaches the ultralight with the respect due any flying machine, he can experience those moments that only airmen know, the indescribable joys of flight.
Well, hope you liked part 1 of Flight. Part 2, we're going to deal with skydiving. Johnny Richardson and Tracy Batchelder volunteered to be our guinea pigs, made their first parachute jump under the expert tutelage of my pal Rich Zimmerman. So the next one that we're going to show will be on the site. It's called part 2 of Flight.